in my attempt to be fair, I am going to start reacting to some other other channels, MSNBC, CNN, and those sort of things. I've been getting a lot of flack on Twitter, especially about this, about never seeing the other side. So we're going to try to. All right. So this one right here is actually entitled, "Why is Fox News going to extraordinary lengths to hide January 6th hearing proceedings?" All right. So let's check this out. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. And hey, feel free to go all out. You know what I mean? I'm not sensitive.
We begin the readout tonight with a choice between facing the truth or looking the other way. On Thursday night, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, NBC, CNN, all will be covering the first primetime public hearings of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. That means pretty much every cable news channel and 3 of the main broadcast networks will be providing wall-to-wall coverage. Everyone except Fox News, which will stick with its regularly scheduled programming of Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham. They're demoting their coverage of the hearings to the much less watched Fox Business Channel. The network said on Monday that its primetime hosts will cover the event as news warrants. The network's decision might help avoid some awkwardness for Hannity and Ingraham, who were actively communicating with Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff, on that violent day. In the 17 months since the insurrection, Fox News, particularly the folks in prime time, have spent hours undermining the severity of the attack on the Capitol, and even more hours painting the investigation of it as a partisan witch hunt against the former president.
Now, I do want to ask you this right now. It shows some quotes up here. It's one from Tucker Carlson, and y'all know I watch Tucker Carlson now. That dude is serious, but he gets straight to the point. But they have him saying, "Why are we still talking about this? Talking about the insurrection?" Sean Hannity dismisses upcoming January 6 hearings as the latest attempt to bludgeon Trump, and Laura Ingraham dismisses January 6 insurrection as a narrative. So if y'all can help me out in the comments as to why Fox no longer want to discuss this, that would be amazing, because I do want to hear that as well.
Despite there being 2 Republicans on the committee, including Vice Chair Liz Cheney. According to Philip Bump of the Washington Post, the reason for not letting Fox viewers see the truth for themselves could simply be that playing any of the January 6th hearing would undermine that narrative. Bump writes that a group of researchers for the Center for Open Science recently published a study showing how Fox News viewers are influenced by their coverage. And when they are forced to watch a different network, they walk away with a broader sense of knowledge, and one that makes them less likely to agree with what Fox is saying. So I started thinking about that today in the context of stained glass windows and the church in medieval times. Now stay with me for a second. Do you know why churches have stained glass windows? Those windows were the primary way for the church to spread their message about God to the poor. It was the only way they could communicate a very specific vision to a large swath of the largely illiterate masses. The pictures literally tell the stories. The church went further in enforcing their preferred.
I never knew that before. I'd always wonder why do we have these style glass windows on these churches? I always thought they looked foolish, in my opinion. I mean, decorative, but I really didn't care too much about the historic part of practically anything, for real. I was just one of those kids from urban community, but at the end of the day, I really didn't care. But this is good information to have. All right.
Preferred narrative. They banned translated versions of the Bible because they wanted to control and restrict the teachings in order to enhance their own power and importance. But it was the priests, they were the ones who interpreted the biblical texts. Even after the invention of the printing press, it was uncommon for European Christians to read the Bible for themselves. Sometimes doing so or translating it was literally actually could get you in trouble. Just leave the reading and the interpreting to the church hierarchy. Thanks. That is basically what Fox News is doing. They are saying, leave it to Rupert's folks to tell you what happened and what you should think about it. They've got this. You don't need to watch it for yourself. And so Fox News viewers will not hear from Nick Quested, a British filmmaker who recorded members of the far-right Proud Boys extremist group days ahead of and on the day they stormed the Capitol. What he saw left him shaken and fearful for the future of the United States. Fox News viewers will not hear from Caroline Edwards, a U.S. Capitol Police officer who had her skull cracked after being assaulted by insurrectionists, including those same Proud Boys. Fox News viewers will probably not hear about how the former president pressured the Secret Service to devise a plan for him to join his supporters on a march to the Capitol, or how Trump was cool with the idea of hanging Mike Pence. And we all know that Fox News does have an appetite for investigations.
Hold up. Trump was cool with the idea of them hanging Mike Pence. I remember people yelling that Mike Pence was a traitor, and I don't know why. Was it because he didn't stand with Trump when it came to the whole January 6th insurrection? Speaking of, was this Trump's idea? Not only was it Trump's idea, but who told security and everything to stand down when these people decided to go to the Capitol in the way that they went to the Capitol? Also, did they feel like they had a legal right to do so, and was it backed by the Constitution in their opinion? There's a whole lot that goes along with this. Whether or not Fox News is trying to hide something by not broadcasting it, I think that will be speculative and subjective. But at the end of the day, what if, playing devil's advocate? No, I'm not playing devil's advocate because I'm not an advocate of the devil. But what if what they have to talk about is already far more interesting than the January 6th insurrection? And this happened during while Trump was just now leaving office, right? While Trump was leaving office. We're two and a half years in Joe Biden's presidency. Why are we bringing this back up? That's just my opinion. What are we going to get from it?
Right?
That's what I want to know. She said, right?
According to Media Matters, Fox ran more than 1,000 segments on the terrorist attacks in Benghazi, Libya, all culminating in the 11-hour testimony of Hillary Clinton before a House Select Committee. We also know that Fox News will play a central role in the counter-narrative message from Republicans. According to Axios, Fox News will host Trump surrogates because Republicans are looking for networks and social media platforms they feel are more favorable to their cause. And you can surely count on Fox News returning to rolling primetime coverage of congressional hearings of pressing matters like Hunter Biden and the 2020 election, which, of course, Republicans have already made clear they will launch if they win the House and or Senate in November. Joining me now is Paul Butler.
Now, I'm talking about the election and talking about the election. Well, they firmly believe that there was some criminal activity that prevented president from winning. So if they're talking about that, I think that's absolutely huge. I think that's not something that we should just wash over. If there was any type of foul play in that, and preventing a president from being elected, that's huge. That's ridiculously huge, because then that goes over to another 4 years of somebody being able to, of a new president being able to say, okay, this will happen, this won't happen, this will happen, this won't happen. And the economy is dependent on that. Health and safety is dependent on that. And that's not only in one building of the Capitol, that's throughout the entire nation. As a matter of fact, throughout the entire world, when you talk about certain things that we can do as far as import and export. And so that right there is extremely important. I don't think they can even be placed on the same level when you're talking about the insurrection and whether people cheated a president out of winning office. And the other thing, Hunter Biden's emails. That's another thing too. How often does MSNBC discuss those Hunter Biden emails, if at all? I doubt you all discuss those at all. So to be fair, you already know that if one thing looks can potentially put a stain on one side, that's Republican or Democrat side, then obviously the media that represents them are not going to focus on those topics too much. So you're pretty much painting yourself in the corner by putting up one topic the insurrection, January 6th insurrection, against other topics that you all won't cover. But we're going to give this a shot. Let's do it.
Professor at Georgetown Law School and a former federal prosecutor, and Kurt Bardella, advisor to the DNC and the DCCC. Thank you both for being here. You guys both have very sort of interesting kind of connections to the way this works. I mean, Paul, you as a former prosecutor, part of the idea is to tell a story and to get the jury to understand a narrative. So what will it mean for viewers to not see the story, right? Not get the evidence. In a court, you have to actually present the evidence, and then you as the prosecutor tell a story around that evidence. What Fox will have is just their story, not the evidence.
So, Joy, the Republicans are counting on January 6th fatigue. Fox News wants the American people to ignore the fact that this week, members of the Proud Boys have been charged with sedition, meaning prosecutors believe that they plotted to use force and violence to keep Trump in office, even though they knew he'd lost the election. They're trying to divert attention from the federal judge's opinion that found probable cause that Trump himself committed crimes. The big question is whether Republicans can persuade Merrick Garland that it's time to move on, because he's the person who would make the final decision about prosecuting high-level Trump officials for crimes.
You know, it's interesting. They're also, I mean, they're avoiding, Kurt, you know, having to explain why two of their hosts were actually talking to Mark Meadows at the time, particularly Sean Hannity, exchanging lots of messages. So they won't have to explain that because they're just not going to do it. But then the other thing is they don't have to explain why the Proud Boys now control the Miami-Dade Republican Party, why they're now, you know, running for office, why they are actually now part of the Republican Party.
Who are the Proud Boys? I keep on hearing about the Proud Boys. Are those guys that are affiliated with white supremacist groups or something like that? Are they the new modern KKK or something like that? I believe that it's something tied or lined up with that. And I guess they're being tied into Sean Hannity and into Fox News presenters and whatnot. So if y'all can let me know that, that would be dope.
And they will have to explain this. Let's show Nick Quested video. So Nick Quested is the Brit. You guys remember his lovely British accent? He was walking around. He was actually walking around with the Proud Boys. There they are in the garage, in the Hall of the State's parking garage, which will be very familiar to those of us in D.C. He's meeting with individuals. If you can see what he's doing there, he's standing there with Stuart Rhodes, who's also been charged with seditious conspiracy, and others. So you actually now see, if you want to talk about a conspiracy, they're there together. They're not going to have to explain that or the violent video that followed the following day.
You know, Joy, if January 6th is...
Go ahead, Kurt. Kurt first, and then
such a nothing burger. If January 6th is such a nothing burger as the Republican propaganda outlets like Fox News would have us believe, then why are they going to such extraordinary lengths to hide the committee proceedings? If it's such an illegitimate showing, as they're going to be telling all of their audience that it is, then why not air it and let it speak for itself? If something is so preposterous and so illegitimate, surely their viewers are informed and intelligent enough to reach that conclusion independently after watching the proceedings. Fox is hiding it from their viewers. The Republican Party is hiding it from their audience because they know that the presentation that is going to be put forward by this bipartisan committee that features two Republicans, one of whom has the last name Cheney, pretty big Republican bona fides there, they know that this is going to be completely devastating, that all of the straw men that they've put up, all the false narratives and false flags they've tried to advance are going to come crumbling down. And it will be not by Democrat words, not by partisan words, but through the words and testimony of Republicans, of Fox News hosts, of their text messages, their emails, the depositions. It will all be on full display, and it will be irrefutable.
Go ahead, Paul.
So, Joy, while Fox is giving short shrift to the...
Okay, now, politically, I get it. Everyone, like, MSNBC's job is to put out things that would dampen Fox News. Fox News' job is to put out things that would dampen MSNBC or whatever side that's opposite of them. All right. So this dirty job is a tit for tat type of situation. And what benefit does Fox News get from broadcasting this, especially when they know that MSNBC will like to tie this into anything right on the right side, anything conservative. So if their audience are conservative and they know that the BS that y'all are trying to put out there is something that you believe would dampen their what they do over there, what benefit do they have of posting it? I mean, if you want to keep it a buck, what benefit do they have of posting it? Just the same as I would love to see CNN, MSNBC talking about those Hunter Biden emails. I would love to see it. Like when Hillary Clinton was going on that when she was liable for what happened in Benghazi. A lot of that coverage wasn't being done on MSNBC. It was being done on Fox. So it's just one of them things that just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. At what point are we going to seek truth? Because right now, they spent the whole segment speaking on something that's not going to be constructive to their own viewers. Pretty much what they're doing is speaking to their own people. They're speaking to their own. If it weren't for this video that I'm reacting to, a lot of the Republicans or conservative people who support my channel probably wouldn't even see this because they probably don't even look at it. But something that my wife does, and well, she used to do, because I actually talked her out of looking at too much news because it's so negative. It's so negative. But it's something that she used to do when I used to see her in the room looking at news and whatnot. She will watch MSNBC, CNN, Fox. She will watch everything to pretty much come up with everything that everybody's talking about. And she would notice the differences of what channels are talking about what and what channels are not. So the same thing that I just don't like hypocrites. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying all that to say I don't like hypocrites. And basically what we're looking at is something extremely hypocritical because you're calling someone else to do something that you won't do. And that's cowardice.
Largest federal criminal investigation in U.S. history. But we have to note how they love sensational crime coverage of Black and brown people. They went all in when the obscure actor Jussie Smollett was charged with low-level crimes in Illinois, but they're ignoring, again, this most important House panel report probably since Watergate, probably the most important in all time. And I think what they're waiting for. Jussie
Smollett. Everything that was going on with him was far more entertaining than what they're talking about inside of the daggone house right now. And also the fact that they saw a lot of people on MSNBC and CNN taking up for Jussie Smollett. And I saw that before I even started reacting to any political anything. The left was taking up for Jussie Smollett. Yeah, a lot. Everybody was on his side, and I didn't understand that either. That had absolutely nothing to do with politics, but for some strange reason, hey, I saw what I saw. Yeah, certain people can't be fooled. I'm one of them.
Is the hope that the House will be re-won by the Republicans in the midterm elections, and then we can expect Republicans to send out subpoenas to Hunter Biden and Dr. Anthony Fauci. Again, that would devolve from the most consequential investigation in the history of the House to pure partisan politics.
Right. I mean, you know, Kurt, even if you don't, for whatever reason, have any emotional connection to the idea of our Capitol being sacked by people who defecated in it and hurt police officers and bludgeoned police officers and cracked one's skull and left at least 5 people died as a result. If that doesn't even move you, you know.
Yeah, the people who did those things to those police officers are complete assholes, complete jerks, complete idiots, and hopefully they are dealt with and handled accordingly and appropriately. Period.
Just as a news story, just as a journalist, if this is actually a news channel, a news network, Fox, this is the biggest news story in all of our lifetimes. We've never had a president attempt to overturn an election, violently overturn it. We've never had a broad seditious conspiracy where there are actual charges of that. Since 1814, we haven't had our capital sacked, and that was not, and never by a domestic, terrorist group. So this is new. We've also never had a president sanction the lynching of his own vice president. This is New York Times reporting. Mark Meadows. On January 6th, Mark Meadows walked into his own office after meeting with the president and told colleagues that Trump was complaining that the vice president was being whisked away to safety. Mark Meadows, according to an account provided to the House committee investigating January 6th, then told the colleagues that Mr. Trump had said something to the effect of, maybe Mr. Pence should be hanged. This is the biggest news story and the most troubling and disturbing story ever. To not cover it is just, it seems negligent, but there are studies that show that if even Fox viewers, as read in and in the bubble as they are, when they watch non-Fox coverage, when they're made to sit down and watch other coverage, they do develop a broader view.
Here's the thing, man. And what's her name? I don't know this young lady's name. Every side that's playing this game are in a bubble. And I'm trying to burst that MF for everyone. You're in a bubble, clearly, because the stuff that I've been seeing, I don't ever see on MSNBC. As much content as I look for that I deem important enough to even review, trust me, I'm looking for some fair, both sides type of content from MSNBC as well, especially for the many things that I'm checking out from the conservative side. And I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything. Because that's how I get my truth. I have to hear it from both sides. And the fact that you're saying that this one thing, they need to talk about this one thing, because this one thing will not, they don't care about opening the minds of Republicans. They care less about that. What you want is for this one thing to be the what you call it, the straw that breaks the camel's back is what they call it back in the day, or they still call it that. That's what you wanted to be. And you wanted to be the straw that breaks Fox News or the conservatives back so that they won't ever get back in power. There's a huge rush coming up, and there's going to be a whole lot of mud slinging. I get that, because another election is coming up. But I would love to check out some things from MSNBC where they are speaking on everything fairly as well. And if you're not, you can't be calling anybody else to do it. You can't. It's simple. It's honestly, it's plain and simple. You can't do that.
Well, and this is why, Joy, and I just wrote this in a column that was just published at the LA Times, that I think it's time that we reach the point where we stop treating Fox like a news outlet at all, because it's clearly not. They are making the conscious decision to commit journalistic malpractice by ignoring the biggest story right now, the biggest story perhaps in our entire country's history, actually. When you look at where this is all going, this is a major pivotal inflection point in the fight to salvage democracy, and they are choosing not to cover it. That's not the action of a responsible news outlet. That's not the action of a journalist. That's not the action of a reporter. That is the action of a propaganda vehicle for a political party that is determined to play a substantial role in undermining democracy as we know it. Why these people are allowed to have a White House press briefing access, why they're allowed to have a press credential to cover the U.S. Capitol, I have no idea, because I know this. If Al-Qaeda created a media outlet, we wouldn't give them a hard pass to cover our government. Why in the world would we allow the people who are egging on, fomenting, and defending insurrectionists to have that type of access?
Why is this the biggest story? Why? Why is this the biggest story? Because it's the Capitol? because five officers were hurt. What about all the other stuff that's happening in the country? Far bigger stories. Just over the weekend, there was a whole lot of shootings. A whole lot of shootings. And they all were not with AR-15s. That's a bigger story. In my opinion, that's a huge story. People pick and choose what they want to talk about. And I'm actually listening to people who have that journalistic integrity, and they don't have it.
They shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm not hearing what I need to hear, but I'm still going to continue to check out both sides, and hopefully we can get something done by doing so. Please make sure y'all are watching both sides, because I think it's important that we not ignore anyone. Because let me tell you something: when you ignore, or when you try to, when it seems like you're running away from a fight, they deem you a coward. And unless you're a coward, then you will fight, you will stand there, and you will address certain things. And that's exactly what we all should do. And I want to hear what you all have to say about this in the comments below. And if you have yet to hit that subscribe button, please make sure you do so on your way out the door. Once again, guys, I'm Van, and now we are all the LFR family. I look forward to seeing you on the next video, hopefully inside the Patreon as well. Y'all have been amazing. Love y'all. Bye.